Introduction. Discussing the first part of this abridged Zaggle Zooogle screenplay series. This summary, hopefully writ to nimbly explain, came about conceive, plan, pen then illustrate this speculative fare by the author after getting this far now publishing world's first maybe last econo sci-fi unfilmed script to film proposal. Perhaps earning some questions hereon tries answering, for those having read the script now curious to learn about the underlying philosophy behind it and much else that may be of some interest. For unlike books, unfilmed/unusual scripts, chancing to be taken more filmable seriously can have add-on treatments such as here, helping creatively commercially explain sell this concept from plot to conclusion. Although not really to script agents or producers, for in this case a far preferring cultivate general readers who if enough enjoy it may suggest movie can be made. Assuming the script has been read before arriving here, this summary, albeit more formal, is similar writ using language style, which readers may be now accustomed to, notably many invented words, phrases and terms, ensuing with any luck slick writ accessible enough to be read, if keen to learn more about this. Breezy atop adroit attempts succinct explore ZZZ Part 1 abridged through plot, synopsis, character, language, aesthetic, theme and conclusion. Mayhap nurture to elicit lay readership interest above economists, being the storyline subject but not really the intended audience here. After the author laborious proverbial, diligently wrote obligatory synopsis for the script, then ad hoc added character, plot, aesthetic, language and other sections. Ballooning ambitioning this to full-blown summary, hopefully helping this sci-fi script starring robotized economists taken more serious, intriguing, fathomable or at least well-intended thought through, than mere seen or simply dismissed as outlandish unfilmable joke. But admittedly this summary is now felt simply too boring, self-serving and unnecessary to be included with the script, so hereon published alone in its own right for those angling learn more about this series. Risking to endure this authored often rather breezy, flippant, imperfect, catch-all sweeping lay take on economic theory and much else, but may suffice for inquisitive general readers willing to forgive its glib slapdash foibles. For beneath economic textbook, this summary is penned by sci-fi scriptwriter not an economist, but he evidently enjoys dares suffer some passing interest in them and their vainglorious extraordinary yet vital subject. Enough now unleash fitful publish this Zaggle Zooogle series thus far. Unlike its screenplay, this summary does not really need to be laborious read from start to finish, ergo lengthy, leaden and rather boring plot and synopsis can be skipped to imbibe arguably more sophisticated sections ending in conclusion, being far more salient, important, intriguing and interesting. And pray note any unauthorized economists purchasing this are duty-bound obliged to at least imbibe the theme section, hopefully slaking to engaging some curiosity out of them. And to all readers, if on reaching here, now already bored by the prospect of exploring economics, but could be eased by page flicking through following this while listening to the audiobook of this screenplay summary. Available in male or female voiced versions that may be of use, hopefully enabling endure what many feel unendurable. But like it or not, economics be foremost fair, for chancing made big screen film discussed here, or as best the lay author can persuasive muster, in trying garner wider readership audience as possible. Paulo Krugadroid. Prolifically opinionated, high-profile, vociferous, engaging, ebullient new kino econ with or without kino rallies, organizes and argues at Ostros and specially at Chicagoza in Americanza, notably when Kino is preoccupied in tackling '08 banking/financial crisis falling out upon Britainza, Eurasia and Asia. AKA Paul Krugman, invariably effusive, quotable, combative, compelling, witty and more, often quite closely argued, helped portrayed via author having read one of his books. Enjoying high profile even among other Keynesians, in forefronting urging best adopt ever more Keynesian economics, arguing proven right during the '08 crisis. Inevitably infuriating his freer market Austro-Chicago critics, targeting him second only to Keynes, but he endures remaining inimitable in his deep-felt interventionary activism, especially when crisis called upon. Paolo Davo, grizzled carping, often cranky yet stalwart econ, heading sizable post-Kinos, habitually resenting, invariably arguing, indeed accusing neo/new Kinos for, in so many or want of finer words, of misreading/betraying qua completely screwing up Keynesianism today. AKA Paul Davidson founded, albeit confusingly titled, Post-Keynesian Faction in mid-70s response against Samuelson et al. Onward ergodic latter stage golden age post-war Keynesian orthodoxy. That sort of became neo/new Keynesian in '80s in order, or attempting to respond against neo/new classical Chicago paradigm. Quite closely portrayed and often more preoccupied in wanting to fix majority new Keynesian away from dominating Keynesianism today, to taking uncertainty more seriously, chiefly after new Keynesian was found too similar, neoclassic, tainted with Chicago foibles in '08. David Stockyboglewell, Reaganite '80s former Politica now Austro-Econo hanger-on, with or without Hayek, argues tending witheringly, rants from AIZ on against Kino re-emergence. AKA David Stockman, irrepressible, irascible, irreverent like many others, and often quite closely argued, helped portrayed by the author having read his lengthy polemic book, penned in irate response to Guvos adopting Keynes in '08 against free market Austro alternatives. Rono Palobot, Congressabot, redoubtable libertarian Tea Party activist and Miso-Hayekian Austro follower, long-standing, principled and independent, argues against majority fellow politicas, who voted for TARP and ignored his third Revo Austro alternative aspirations. AKA Ron Paul, quite closely portrayed, specifically in discussing Politica dimension in Capita Hilly environs/context. Dello Cyberlocks, intrepid financial hack, arranges meeting econs in his apartment, helps discuss financial reporting perspective, will no doubt be more interrogated in final part via importantly representing media discourse, against critically annoyed econo guests. Fictitious character writing for WSJ, FT, Economista and others, portrayed reasonably civilized, almost friendly, but remains friendless throughout being a journalist. Safeo Amo, often mocking, direct, amusing and bumptious, erudite Austro-Econ undaunted, advocates Bitcoin futures for replacing fiat monetary system, a visionary sea-changing prospect exciting him, argue others, including fellow Austros, adhere his prophecy. Rather than assuming free banking and regolding be the only options for Austros to third Revo liberate economy, away from ever bigo Kino Guvo. AKA Saifedean Amis spearheading Bitcoin in Austro terms, in arguing could replace fiat currency dollars/euros etc. in years ahead. Heralding a new econo era above top-down printo press manipulated, thus reducing Guvo made more honest to voters in what it can and cannot do for them. Among most other Austros, this younger up-and-coming deft econ, is increasingly sure-footed, seen as the go-to Austro Bitcoin bot, and can almost be as irreverent, scornfully witty and entertainingly opinionated as Peter Schiff, who in earned reputation has been prolifically around a lot longer to be so. Out of interest, his digital model pictured in the script can sort of resemble him, even though made him too shiny, but still looks good in a suit. Vijay Boyapatawak, boyish Google Gonk engineer turned Bitcoin futurist, enjoys often airily enthusing ahead of Amo to dreamily envisage about living in Bitcoin world made real, in econo Austro liberating amass livelihoods beyond excessive Guvo interference. AKA Vijay Boyapati closely portrayed / argued through like fellow youthful Bitcoin promoters Amo and Valley. Janza Valley, eloquent like other Bitcoin activists / maximalists, when he and them champion Bitcoin against detractors including fellow older more skeptical Austros, thus helping situate Bitcoin debate within Austro discourse and out wider beyond. AKA John Vallis, similar to other Bitcoin enthusiasts, advocating this burgeoning alternative cryptocurrency through various media, such as podcasting, conferring, book writing, etc. Andro Bonaparte, engaging and combative forcefully spoken lawyer, lightly advocates Austro cause especially against tarpery, infuriating him argue that Polypunker repurposed TARP beyond what Congressa granted it to be used for. Thus deep felt feels Polypunker indeed Bush administration acted unconstitutionally. AKA Andrew Napolitano closely portrayed broadcaster, specializing in legal affairs including lively interest in Austro-econo-libertarian matters. Dicko Floppyfold, pugnacious, colorful and embattled irascible CEO, heading Wally Street Investico Bank Lehman Brothers, illuminating subprime banking problems. AKA Dick Fold closely portrayed regarding Lehman Brothers' collapse into bankruptcy, arguably the most dramatic, talked about and consequential event within story. Abridged versus unabridged. The felt characters near plot themselves in unfurling events, all in storylining thematically explore econo intellecto ambitioning abridged, whilst unabridged enthralling venturing more thematically complex. Revving testing challenging erudite atop much more, exercising to maybe more assuming the economist as audience than lay. Writ unbound carefree as author intended, alike novelist more can or painter with canvas, than traditional scripting trammeled to 3 hours filmable prerequisite assumptions, not followed here, preferring pursuing writ as intended in having nothing to lose, in already being about economics as it is. But still practical via unabridged, costing no more than 15% than abridged, in that extra shooting mostly more scenic arguing in interior corridors / rooms, is hard to write but cheap to film than expensive exterior environs. For in this instance thematic talk is cheap to shoot, so worth filming, making unabridged ambitions possible, born up from abridged fundamentals but not from the other way round. In short, the theme re-economics stays as writ intended unabridged, whilst is amenable, pragmatic and negotiable in abridged, helped via very easy editable news-fed / doc structure largely prevailing the film in entirety. Nonetheless, the notion that economics is too intellectually difficult, boring, academic, complex etc., as if best contained wrestled down from unabridged reduced to tameable abridged, implying failure at the outset when film not able, communicating anything to anyone if creatively fine, or at least trying fathom a way through maybe beyond reach but worthy ambitioning. Mind you, how far does one need to know about the finer points of Keynes, Austro and Chicago theory exercising econs arguing, for ultimately the scriptwriter cum filmmaker must draw the line somewhere, merely in this instance aspiring higher than mainstream sci-fi norms. Particularly unabridged writ as author would like to see it, in being its audience, while abridged is hopefully shaped a little more conventionally palatable, yet still challenging mainstream audience. Maybe teased curious enough, in brazen wanting to imbibe the unexpurgated more creatively and compromising, intellectually aggressive, daring, insightful, involving and sophisticated version later on. Well, at least the author hopes so. This conflict, or at least difference between creator and consumer, can be neatly illustrated by Caravaggio, deep felt, intuitive and intimate, painted as intended, yet patrons rejected it. So he painted another, this time more comparatively straightforward, showy, popular orthodox version. Serving patrons what they wanted but arguably less complex. Appeasing safer crowd, praying pleasing accessible. Messaging to conforming easy readable expectations, mores and simpler sensibilities. But not necessarily felt finer for those wanting to witness more, as the artist first innately intended to evoke, indeed portray, or alike an author obliging literary fiction agency on having to occasionally talk to them. The inspiration of St. Matthew, then St. Matthew and the Saint be the paintings in question, being left to you to search out / decide upon, for looking beyond first impressions, you may find more depth, complexity and subtlety than the slightly more shrill offering, as alike the abridged v. unabridged version. On the whole, if left unhindered by commercial / producer studio pressure to please audience / filling cinema seats, filmmakers prefer the more innate than easy please all. Yet the canvas of film to be painted on is costly, involving many ensuing creative dilution. Ergo compromise else would not get made. Nor always made finer by fabled auteur, when a plenty film has been rescued, made better via meddlesome others. For the age-old tension between creative and commercial control is ever ongoing, most notably in collaborative costly filmmaking. Thus not wish privileging author too much, but for those wanting more plot, aesthetic, language, character, all in exploring thematic complexity, storylining unabridged, more ferocious / unbending etc. than abridged, then at least this time round be seen than cutting room floor swept away. Being not extraneous but as authored unhampered writ intended, over 12 hours more in unabridged as indicated in scene-by-scene synopsis, showing where the abridged came from. Arguably this story rounds off Kino more complete than Austro decentralized solutions, being more developed amid other econo arguments in unabridged, whilst Huron only attempts summarizing what writ in abridged than that which is not there. Overlooking a great deal of econo theory / agro complexity, with theme being ultimo determiner wrestled down, distilled more edible in abridged Huron, to a far more likely garner a mass audience, rather than somewhat harder-nosed more boundless unabridged would cater for. But then again maybe ought briefly discuss third revolutioning, scrapping legal tender and deposit insurance, allowing private money minting, deregulo freeing up bankery setting their own rates, reserve and issuance. Enabled competed providing better monetary product alike any other product, than monetary centralized Guvo fiat monopoly via Fed, Bank of Anglico, ECB etc. Such central banks Ostros RU merely facilitate Guvo / top-down manipulating money to manage economy, and albeit well-intended / Guvo mandated in practice to more or less extent historically inflate / destroy savings through setting the rates amiss / mispricing money. invariably bubble boomy to bursting bust in upsy-downsy cycles, with latest '08 downturn indebting everyday econo freedoms evermore taken up through Guvo. Enlarged not via gun but everyone's money that they control. According to Ostros arguing Guvo/central banks control monetary policy so badly to now not abolish centros, but at least demonopolize transition to compete with other banks now freed up. Allowing a mass choose their own money alike any other product, then top-down manipulated, eroding everyday savings/spending power qua economic freedoms evermore unseen whittled away, invariably via inflation that Ostros retort everyone has to pay for. Whereas Kinos admit Guvo/central banks must improve, but via central bank rubric then risk resuming decentralized chaos, alike in US 1907 that prompted US Guvo creating Fed in 1913, centralizing monetary system into dollars than re-banking system, having run away everyone into havoc. Which Ostros argue were caused through state regulo, but admit runaways can still occur in decentralization. However, if done properly today, unlike pre-1913, any monetary ruckus be localized/more containable. Ergo playing itself out rather than systemic wider fallouts via low-rated Senko 01, easy-moneyed inflated housey banking bubble to bursting on Benny qua everyone everywhere by '08. Whilst Kinos argue '08 happened by central bankery, failing regulating banks, housey lending standards whatever, rather than blame centros for low-rating easy money being what Ostros claim, who argue centros if not re-gold money ought at least be competed against via free bankery. Indeed, free banking/decentralizing the monetary system is Ostros' answer to reducing uncertainty via free market mechanism, while Kino avers it being imperfect prone to fail. Thus will always enroll Guvo/centro sensible regulo for managing the market against uncertainty, which risks damaging too much everyday econo livelihoods according to Kino. Kino fiscal monetary v. Milto monetary v. Hayek neither. In short, unfurling '08 events storylines Milto, agreeing monetary intervention while Kino includes fiscal and Hayek argues neither, necessitating such clear-cut dichotomy makes it more possible to thematically discussing, contrasting invariably already complex econo-agro/positions. Exaggerated to easier storyline discussed between them, albeit not by that much being well-found arguments in '08 and still argued over today, and events into econs also needing not that much fictionalized, except environed in humo mechanica world yet even then as alike ours bar the metal. All in all, unfolding events toppling upon characters especially econs, rowing over what Guvo best to do, explicating economics through ongoing conflicting aggro. Whilst too much agreeing among them, reduces what can be dynamica explored albeit not much really to worry econo consensus, amid Kino, Ostro or Chicagoza in '08 moreover interminable futures ahead to that matter. Buying schools of econ thought, with Kino heading Kinos with minority post-Kino faction closer obeying general theory, than mainstream saltwater new Kino faction. That arose from neo-classic synthesis 80s on, to defy neo-new classical Chicago's mainstream freshwater econo-politica incumbency, thanks to Guvos enacting Milto aegis broadly seconded by Hayek, against enduring any more stagflated late 70s Kino. The story tends not to stress the term neoclassic, in economics a rather ill-defined concept that can conflate to confuse too much Kino Chicagoza together, which the story needs to clarify more separate, preferring terming new classica Chicagoza against new kino. And also regarding kino, the story generally stresses post-Keynesian above new Keynesian to more easily separate kino from Chicagoza positions, as new Keynesian are sort of neoclassic similar to neoclassic new classical Chicagoza in many ways. In essence, this neoclassic synthesis thing is one unhelpful term too many within story as it is, than to be overstressed from here onward. Okay,